Well, hi folks, welcome once again to our garden. It's Wednesday the 17th of August, about 3:45 in the afternoon, and been a while since I've done a video update, so I just thought I'd do a quick one today. It actually rained yesterday and right through the night, really good solid steady rain, which we desperately need. Has been so dry. So while everything's looking nice and fresh, just thought we'd have a quick walk around and see what we've got going off. We'll start with these vegetable beds. So here we have the brassicas. Brassicas being things like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, all those kind of things. And you can see that these are under netting. Now, this is actually my second attempt at filming this. Pressed the wrong button and stopped the recording, and there was actually a cabbage white butterfly trying to get into this netting. Unsuccessfully, I might add. And I just wanted to show you that as an example of why it's so important to net up your brassicas. If you don't, then the cabbage white butterflies will come and lay eggs on the underside of the leaves of these plants. They will hatch out into caterpillars and they will decimate your crop. I'm not being dramatic here, I don't mean like they'll nibble a few leaves, I mean they will decimate it. So it's really worth having nets over your brassicas. We can harvest these will harvest through autumn and into winter. They're absolutely fine with a bit of frost, so we'll just harvest these as they're ready. This kale, we're actually going to harvest our first lot of leaves today because I'm cooking a roast dinner later on, and they will be perfect, just steamed and seasoned. And the great thing about kale, unlike things like, a cauliflower, you grow a cauliflower, once you've harvested it, that's it, it's gone. Kale keep producing leaves, so we'll just pick leaves off these as we need them. We pick the outer leaves and they will just continue to grow and produce more. These could potentially carry on right until the spring, really. They could go right through winter. So as a possibility for Christmas dinner. Moving on, we've got the second row of beetroot. The first row in here we harvested and pickled them. And actually there is a step-by-step guide on the Facebook page. If you scroll back a little bit, it's not a video, but it's sort of photos and descriptions of how we prepare beetroot for either fresh or for pickling. So if you're wanting to know how to do that, it might be worth checking out. Go to the Facebook page, all about the garden. The second beetroot, so I cropped a couple the other day because they were big enough, and we actually use them fresh. You still boil them when you use them fresh, it's just that you don't do the pickling process. You boil them, peel them, and they'll stay good in the fridge for a good few days. But if all of these come at once, then we'll eat fresh what we can, and we'll pickle any that are left over. We've got a row of pak choi here. This is a really good time for growing pak choi. It's great in things like stir fries, and if you're wanting to grow it and you haven't done so yet, now is the time to be sowing seeds. These will happily grow through the autumn, and they will take a little bit of frost as well. So we'll see how we do with those. Parsnips here. The germination was actually a bit patchy this year. Now, I don't normally have problems with getting parsnips to germinate, which is why you see these gaps here. However, there are 9 parsnips here, and our parsnips tend to get really big, so that's going to be more than enough for our family. And again, probably Christmas dinner. These will still be good right through the winter. In fact, it's best to harvest them after the first frost. These are nowhere near harvestable size yet anyway, but you would normally harvest these after frost because the frost causes the starches to turn to sugars, and that's what gets sweeter parsnips. So they should be very nice. We've got a row of not turnips, swedes. We've got a row of swede. I'll see in a moment. And again, they will crop reliably through autumn and winter. The carrots, Autumn King, they're not quite there yet. They've got a bit of growing to do still, but you can see we've got carrots starting to form there, so they should do all right. And again, these will take a certain amount of frost, so they can just stay in the ground, and we will pick them as we need them. Then next to them here, I've got some spring onion. I'm going to actually overwinter these, which is the way spring onions are supposed to be grown. They're really designed to be overwintered, and then you harvest them in spring, hence spring onions. So we're going to see how they do. What we normally do with spring onions is we sow them sort of at springtime, and then we harvest them right through the summer, really. But we're going to try and overwinter these, see how they go on. I've got a salad bed here. Now this is looking a bit sorry at the moment. So this is where we grow our lettuce and spinach. Now, the thing about lettuce and spinach is that they don't like really hot, dry weather. So what we tend to do is we tend to sow these in spring, and then we usually harvest those through late spring, early summer, and then it gets too hot. So we have a couple of months where we can't really grow them. It just gets too warm here. We're south facing as well, particularly spinach. I mean, it'll bolt if it's too warm. In other words, it'll go to seed and becomes very bitter and starts to flower. Anyway, it's cooling down a little bit now, so what we'll do now, we're towards, well, not the end of the season, but now it's cooled off a little bit. I'm going to clear this bed in a week's time or so, and I'm going to sow fresh lettuce and spinach, and then they should take us right through till the first frosts. The lobelia border just in front here, it's done okay. It's not as spectacular as I would have liked it to have been. I suspect that's got something to do with the dry weather. These are annual plants, so they only last one season, so they don't have a deep root system, and that can sometimes be a problem when we get hot, dry weather. Moving on to the perennial borders, now these are doing really well. Actually, these have been really good this year, and I suspect what it is it's because these are established plants. Some of these are at least 2, some of them 3 years old, which means they've got a really deep root system, and they're obviously finding the moisture under the ground. And we've had a really good successional colour here, really, right from the spring flowering to the mid-season flowering, and now we're getting the late flowering, such as the Rudbeckia and things like dahlias that we've got over here. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with these. The rose bush, the patio rose, this I call it Nikki's rose actually, because that's my wife, and we saw this at the garden centre. It was much smaller than this. We've had it a couple of years now, and she just loved it straight away, so we bought it. The pond, I was given a water iris by a friend of mine. It's a bit too big for this pond, and I can't get the thing to stand up either. But I think what I'm going to do possibly in spring, I think, is divide this. And we need to get some more plants in there because that's going to oxygenate the water. This whole area is a work in progress. It's a bit of a mess at the minute, but we will get that how we want it because I'm a determined gardener. Tomatoes in the greenhouse, you can see plentiful supply there. The weather's been perfect really for tomatoes. I've kept on top of watering and feeding with these. It is important that you feed your tomatoes every week or two with a tomato feed. It just helps the fruits. So it'll not be long now before we crop in these. And then you might notice in between, try and make sure I don't fall over the watering can, just in between here we've got basil, which we grow as a companion plant. And the cooks amongst you will also know that basil goes extremely well with tomatoes, so it makes perfect sense. Sweet potatoes, so this is the first year I've grown these. We're growing some here in the greenhouse and we're growing some outside. Now these actually grow as a vine. They're not at all from the same family as your normal regular potatoes. They do still grow underground, the actual tubers that we'll harvest, but these do grow as a vine and they take a long time to mature. So my plan is that the ones outside I will probably take out and see what we've got when the first frosts come. These can stay in the greenhouse. I'm going to try and keep these going till Christmas. It should be frost free in here, and hopefully we'll have some for Christmas dinner. But I've honestly no idea how these are going to do, so it's a bit of an experiment. Now, as well as showing successes, I think it's also important to be honest about failures. So these cucumbers, I've kind of given up on these. I stopped watering them about, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. The problem is that they were producing flowers and then they weren't producing fruit. Now, normally when you buy cucumber seeds, most of them are female variety, so they don't have to be pollinated. They'll just produce cucumbers. I think when I've ordered these, I've not read the small print, and I think these are male flowers. And because there's been no pollination, we've had flowers, but we've had no fruits. Now, I'm not a huge fan of cucumber, to be honest. I don't mind it. I can take it or leave it. But the rest of my family love it. But they won't be getting any from the garden this year, unfortunately. But there are far worse things in life that can happen. Next thing I want to show you is this stunning sunflower. This is a dwarf variety. Look at the amount of flowers on that. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. They're lovely, sort of burnt red and orange. And then in the background, we've got a standard sunflower. You can see, well, that's probably about 11 foot tall. It's massive. It's not formed a flower head yet. Let me just come through to the other side. That's better. Not formed a flower head yet, but there's still plenty of time left. And then in between those is where we have our outdoor cherry tomatoes, and you can see that there are plenty of tomatoes on there. We have actually cropped quite a lot of these so far. These have been cropping for a couple of weeks now, and we've yet to run out of tomatoes. And then we've got some marigolds here as well as companion planting. Helps to keep the pests away, and it just makes it look nice as well. Now if I just sort of spin round and step back over this bed, you see the sweet corn. This is another first for me this year. I've never grown sweet corn before, but it's looking good. Where you see these tufts here, this is where the actual cobs will form, and there'll probably be 2 or 3 per plant. So I'm really pleased with them. Everything's looking good so far, and again, it's been the ideal kind of weather for them. Dwarf French beans. The great thing about these is that you can have these as a follow-on crop. So you can sow these quite late in the season, and you can plant them out, you know, August time, really, as late as August, and these will mature very quickly. Now we've already had a meal's worth of French beans off these. They are dwarf variety, so they don't need any kind of support. And if I can just kind of get in there and show you, picked these a couple of days ago, and already we've got some more that are actually just about ready for harvesting. So they're very prolific. Then we've got the outdoor sweet potatoes. So all along here, and you can see that they're starting to ramble off through the beans, off into the sweet corn. As I say, this is a first, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave these to do their thing. Now, I've got these wigwams in here because what I was going to do is I was going to tie all the foliage up onto these. And so I saw somebody do it on YouTube. The thing is, though, I then read that these actually should be allowed to ramble along the ground because they will put sort of roots down into the ground, extra ones, along the length of the plant, and that's where more potatoes will form. So my plan is to let these go mad. By the time we come to harvest these, round about November time, probably when the first frosts come, the dwarf French beans and the sweet corn will be done by then. So these can just have the whole bed. And look, we'll see how they do. I have no idea if it's going to be worth it, if the yield that we're going to get is worth the space that we're using. If we do get a good yield, then we'll be happy with that, because we do use a lot of sweet potato. We all really like it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's something I've always wanted to try. And I think once a year every gardener should try and grow something new that they've never done before. Just broadens your knowledge a little bit as well. And then we've got the strawberries, which these are obviously all done now. We've had quite a lot of strawberries off these. To say this is a first year crop, we did alright actually. Normally with strawberries you leave them for 3 or 4 years, and each subsequent year the crop gets heavier. And you can see these are starting to put out what we call runners, which means they're sending shoots out on which new baby plants will grow, and they will produce fruit next year, and so on and so forth into years 3 and 4. And then what we do after year 4, we take out any new young runners, we pot them up, put them in the greenhouse, we clear this bed, and then we plant those baby runners back out again, and the process starts again. So we never need to buy strawberry plants. We can just rejuvenate the bed every 4 years. We just have to accept that 1 year out of 4 in the first year we won't get as big a crop, but you know, free strawberries for life. You can't really go wrong with that. Compost bin's filling up nicely. I do need to turn this into this one pretty soon. I try and turn my compost 3 or 4 times a year if I can, and yeah, it should be okay. We can't make enough compost here to do the whole garden. We just don't have enough waste material. But what this will do is this will be used in the greenhouse, and I use this in the greenhouse borders for things like tomatoes and cucumbers, which are hungry plants and really will like a good quality compost. So that's about it, folks. Do you know, it's not been without its challenges, this gardening year. We all know how bad it's been with the drought, etc. But to be honest, for everything that hasn't worked out well, there's been plenty of things that have done. The weather is something that you can't control, so there's no point worrying about it. It's a bit like life, really. There's no point worrying about things that you can't control. But I think it's been a pretty good gardening season so far, and there's still plenty more to come. So we'll leave it there. I will do a couple more updates before the end of this season for sure. And but until then, look after yourselves, take care. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.